Welcome to the Workamper Show, brought to you by Workamper.com. This podcast helps you discover how to finance your RV travel dreams. Each one of our episodes will introduce you to people who are already living the RV lifestyle or to work camping opportunities all around the U.S. You'll also learn how to hit the road the right way and make the most of every opportunity. Now let's turn over today's show to your host, Greg Gerber.
This week I'll be speaking with a solo RVer who has found tremendous purpose as a volunteer work camper for 7 years while starting an online platform to share his adventures. Today's episode is sponsored by Workamper News. Much more than just a job listing website, when you put the tools of this professional service into action, you'll find out just how easy it can be to turn your work camping dreams into reality. A Workamper membership opens the door to a one-stop shop for all things work camping. Being the original resource for work camping, you'll find the largest number of job listings, be able to connect with a community of work campers, and view resources compiled by experts who've been enjoying the RV lifestyle for many years. If you're serious about leading a successful and enjoyable work camping lifestyle, then membership is for you. Join today at www.workamper.com. Embark on new adventures today with the support of Workamper News behind you. My guest today is Sam Gennawey. He's an urban planner turned full-time RVer who's been living on the road for more than 7 years. What began as a search for a more intentional future quickly became a lifestyle that allowed Sam to explore America's most remarkable places while keeping his expenses manageable. Sam travels in a 2012 Airstream Interstate, which is a black Mercedes-based touring van he affectionately calls Darlene. He has put nearly 200,000 miles on his vehicle, boondocking across the country, sleeping in unexpected places such as minor league ballparks, and navigating everything from flat plains to rugged mountain passes. Along the way, he has lived and worked in some of America's most iconic national parks as a volunteer interpreter and campground host. Big Bend, Death Valley, the Redwoods, North Cascades, Aztec Ruins, and Sequoia National Park are just a few of the places that have become his temporary home. Sam's experiences offer a valuable look at the realities, challenges, and joys of long-term RV travel and how volunteering can make a lifestyle more sustainable, meaningful, and affordable. To tell us more about his adventures, please welcome Sam Gennawey to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Sam. I really appreciate it. How long have you been RVing?
I have been on the road now for about 7.5 years.
What prompted you to do this?
I got into it quite a bit in my book, Sacred Landscapes. I was one of those kind of people that I'm of that age where I started looking at what my future was going to be and decided that I needed to take more control over it. And so I started looking into different things that I could do and really fell in love with this idea because I love traveling. And I always thought it was sad that if you're really traveling and you're retired, and you decide that you're going to live in an apartment, but you're going to travel most of the time, that means you're paying for a house that you're never really in. So I decided to take the house along with me so that I could make it more economically sustainable. And also, too, where the real vision of this came from was I was interviewing. I was an urban planning consultant, and an urban planner prior to retirement. At one point, I thought, I'm going to go become like the planning director of some city that inevitably I would like, and then I would retire into that city. And being a Californian, I went to some great cities, got some interviews, would drive up to those places, and would really love the drive and love the journey. And then I would get to the interview and I would sit in the interview and I would look at where my office would be. And I would look at the uniform or outfit that I would have to wear or the name tag that I had, or do I have to dress in a tie or am I going to be in a polo shirt all day? And then I'd thought to myself, oh, just shoot me now. I don't want to do this. I looked at my finances, recognized that if I planned carefully, I would be able to avoid that as my future. I'm really glad that I did. This has been the thrill of a lifetime, and I'm not tired of it yet, that's for sure.
What type of RV do you have?
I have a 2012 Airstream Interstate. It's a black van. Her name is Darlene. I bought her used, with very low mileage, and I put on almost 200,000 miles on this thing over the 7.5 years. It's great. In all sorts of ways, it's positive. If there's any negative to it, I can say It's a Mercedes-Benz van with an Airstream interior. Let's just pick two of the most expensive companies that you could have. So I always have to have a big gulp when I have to do repairs and maintenance and stuff like that to it. But I'm glad that I bought a really quality vehicle like this.
It sounds like you've gotten quite a bargain, actually, if you've got 200,000 miles on your vehicle.
Yeah, when I bought the thing, it was one of these kind of Airstream Interstates are famous for being rich people motorhomes, not to sleep in, but to take the whole family from their beach resort to their mountain resort. So this one was about 10 years old. It was old when I got it, and it had very low mileage to it, which I thought was absolutely spectacular. And I just felt really lucky with it. So far, the van, I called Darlene my rolling rehab, like any good piece of equipment. And she's like a B-52 in the sense that the frame is good. She's got good bones. And then over the years, I've just been replacing everything. So anything that's like a rubber bit has been, for the most part, replaced. Or all the plastic stuff that's on the roof of your rigs, especially if you're in the Southwest most of the time, the UV rays start to eat through that. So all the plastic stuff on the top of the roof has been replaced. And every once in a while, this week, I think we're going to be getting a new emaciator pump is what the dealer's going to try to sell me, even though I just need to get a small leak fixed underneath the van. But I think that's typical of most people who do this, which is you're constantly making small repairs, upgrades to keep your equipment fresh. And you just hope that not too many of that happens all at one time.
No kidding. That can get expensive over time. I don't know of a single RV owner who does not maintain an ongoing list of things that need tweaking or replacing.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I liken it to the idea that I'm from Southern California, right? Los Angeles. So I'm used to earthquakes. I live in a house that's constantly in an earthquake. And it's always getting shaken and rattled. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have the same thing when you're driving on a dirt road and your butt clenches because the dirt road's bouncing. In fact, we'll get into this, I'm sure, more because I volunteer at national parks. One of the national parks I always wanted to work at was Chaco Culture National Monument in New Mexico. But the road's 22 miles of the worst road in America. And I just thought, I can't do it. So I worked at Aztec Ruins, which is all the fun stuff about the Chaco culture, except for it's in the middle of a town. So I wouldn't have to worry about destroying my poor van.
No kidding. So do you still do urban planning, like on the side? Are you a consultant? Or how do you support yourself on the road?
I wrote a book about a guy named Jay Stein, who is the guy who created the Universal Studios theme parks. And one of the things I really admired about Jay is that when he decided to change careers, or just to change and retire, he just retired. He didn't stroke it along. I've done a little bit of work. There was a museum that I did a consulting to, only in the sense that I ran some community workshops on how to enhance and reinforce that museum. That was in Albuquerque. I did write, because I've written national landmark studies, one for an historic district in the city of Albuquerque. But no, when I look at the work camping thing, I think there's two ways you go. One is that you take your life and that you find a way of supplementing your income. I'm old enough, I have Social Security. You supplement your income with some other job and you watch the limits and stuff like that so you don't get penalized for your good deeds. The other way is just to be a little bit more reliant on your savings and just try to find ways of not spending money. So in my particular case, I wanted the flexibility and I also wanted the ability to give back. So I got really hooked on volunteering for the National Park Service and also one state park, a California State Park in the Redwoods, only because the Redwoods National Park doesn't really have any volunteer positions. And so I go and the way that I figured it out is I go and I'll work at a national park for about 2 months, because I figure that's my expiration date's over by that point. I will live and work there, which I get to live on the property for free. I get all my utilities. In many of the parks, they'll even pay for my propane as well, too. So I have no real cost other than the van I park, and because I want to save my poor van, I'm able to not have to drive nearly as much. So every 2 weeks, I'll take the van, I'll pack it up, and I'll go on a journey someplace that's somewhat nearby the park that I'm working at. And in this particular case, this last time in Aztec Ruins, I was there for 6 weeks due to the government shutdown. And in the 6 weeks, I drove 400 miles. So not putting much in the way of gas, and went to both Mesa Verde and up to Pagosa Springs and Chimney Rock, and had great trips and stuff out of there, and ultimately ended up in Santa Fe. So I found that works for me better, is just I can save money on one end, save equipment, save wear and tear on the van, save wear and tear on myself, and then be able to give back and really get to explore these incredible sacred landscapes, these most amazing places. So I've lived at Big Bend National Park, Death Valley, Sequoia National Park, up in the Redwoods, Aztec Ruins, North Cascades up in Washington. I dressed up as a rich Scottish guy at Grand Portage National Monument, and next summer I'm going to be dressed up as a cavalry soldier at Fort Larned. That's the tack that I took, is the idea that if I can save money, I can extend and save equipment wear and tear. I can extend and make my life rather sustainable. So I just didn't want to earn a paycheck anymore. I've done that. I've been there.
I've heard a lot of people love volunteering at the national parks because they get advice from the rangers about places to go and things to see that are off the beaten path, that are away from where most tourists like to go. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. The parks themselves are really good about you wanting to learn more about it. So I had access to the libraries. So never had to buy a book. That was great. And they always give you have a key to everything is one of the things that you get. And they tell you where the everything is that you can go. And in certain parks, like in North Cascades in Washington, we had what we called a field day, which is that once a month I got one of the company cars, which is what I like to call the government trucks, and I had the entire day to go anywhere in the park I wanted, whether it was open to the public or not. So I could go do anything that I wanted to do because they wanted us to experience the park. At Big Bend, they floated us down the Rio Grande River. They allowed me to go with one of the rangers and one of the big SUVs into the backcountry, which is something I would have never done in my van. So I got to be able to do that, and that was exciting. And then also at Big Bend, because the park is so large and there's so few people there, they have an airplane, and I got trained to go with the pilot and to fly over the park to look for things that are burning and dead bodies. So I got to fly over the park. At Aztec Ruins, their relationship to Chaco culture is very distinct. The two parks are really one park in a way. And they wanted me to experience Chaco Canyon to supplement what I was doing up at Aztec Ruins. So one day they gave me the car and I got to go down and spend the entire day at Chaco Canyon. And then a couple of weeks later, I got invited to go back down to Chaco Canyon to listen to a talk from the governor of Acoma Pueblo about the Acoma Pueblo people's life at Chaco, which was a very special experience. So yes, when you volunteer for the National Park Service, you get access to their information. You get the equivalent of ranger training. In fact, you sit with the rangers, the seasonal rangers, while they're going through their training program. So you're getting all of that knowledge. Most of the time, this is like a week-long program. You're going out into the park with the geologists and the archaeologists and the naturalists, the people who are taking care of the animals and everything. It's just so fun that they're letting me do this, and I get to see and do these things. And it's one of the, I think, the real paybacks for it.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're having a great experience. I know you were just in one of my all-time favorite cities, Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Yes.
I lived there for a couple of years when I was discharged from the Air Force after spending some time in Alamogordo. What'd you think of Las Cruces?
Oh, I really liked it. I spent the night, I don't know if you've been there, there is a gigantic road runner that's off of a little turnoff on the road that's made out of old computer parts and stuff like that. It's a recycled road runner, and I spent the night there. I really like Las Cruces. I think it was an adorable town. And then I also was really lucky because the government was shut down, but I noticed that White Sands was open, so I quickly ran up there as well. I'm a real big fan of New Mexico. I just spent 1,800 miles and 2.5 weeks driving through New Mexico on my way back out to California again, and just went absolutely everywhere. And it's a very RV friendly state. You can park in downtown Santa Fe with no problems. Las Cruces, no problems. They have lots of little turnoffs. There's, to me, the great secret road of New Mexico is New Mexico Highway 1, which parallels the Interstate 26, but no one's ever on it because it doesn't really go anywhere other than it parallels. And being the old urban planner that I am, and an urban planning historian, I tend to look at maps and realize that there was one road that was the main road to get to point A and B that's historic. And then if that road got busy, they built another road that kind of paralleled that became more of the spine that connected most of the major towns. And then they built the interstates. When you look on a map, you can always get off the interstate and take the other road. It may take you just a little bit longer, but then again, you save money on gas. You're going slower, and you're driving through really beautiful places, and you can discover some really incredible things. So that was my big discovery on this one was Highway 1 down basically from Albuquerque down to Las Cruces, and that turned out to be a terrific find.
Do you do a lot of boondocking in your van?
Yeah, quite a bit. It's a black van, which gives me the benefit that I can go find dark corners places and I can just hide the van there. It's a 22-foot van, so it fits in most parking spots. I'm, like many of you, a big fan of Cracker Barrel. Go Cracker Barrel, that sort of thing. One of the things I discovered a few years ago, I was in the Midwest and the East Coast, which is a little bit more difficult because people just aren't used to this sort of lifestyle there. And I discovered that I've always been a big baseball fan. I discovered minor league baseball parks. And here's the deal with minor league baseball parks. This was a big trend a couple of decades ago in many downtowns, and they're downtown redevelopment projects. And as downtown redevelopment projects, they tend to have large surface parking lots and public streets that are around them. And it's hot, it's humid. You need to find a way, as everyone who lives this lifestyle knows, it's hard to cool down a van. You don't want to run your generator and run your air conditioner. It's too expensive. It's loud and noisy. So I learned that I love minor league baseball. Minor league baseball's cheap.
Yes.
It's $10, $15. Oh my God, if I spent $20, I would be outraged. But I can go to the game, starts at, let's say, 6:30, get into the gate at 5:30, watch the crowd, love the crowds. You learn who's the biggest bank in town, who's the big grocery store, who's the big employer, because those are always the predominant people advertising in those places. Watch the game for 2.5 hours or whatever it takes nowadays, 3 hours sometimes, or 6 hours if you're playing Major League Baseball in a World Series. And then the night comes, it cools down, I go back to the van, and I'm in the parking lot. And you always go to security, and I always ask security, I have a van, I'm parked way at the edge of your parking lot. Can I spend the night in your parking lot? And virtually every park, and this has been 43 of them now, has said, yes, no problem. Just remember, we may lock the gate. You won't be able to get out until 7 in the morning. Hey, no problem. I don't want to wake up that early anyways. And you're going to keep me secure in here. Or like in Las Vegas, I parked 100 feet away from the back gate at the Aviators ballpark because the public street's open and I could park there. So that's something I had discovered. It's both entertainment, allows the van to cool off, learn something about the city, and then just go to sleep next to a baseball park.
Have you been to the Savannah Bananas?
My next job is starting January I'll be working at Fort Pulaski National Monument near Savannah. So I'm going to be there, unfortunately, during the winter. So I'm not going to be able to see the team play, but I'm going to the team store.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
So I'll be living near Savannah.
Do you have a lot of solar on your van?
No, I only have, it's a stock Airstream Interstate from 2012. So it has one 110 watt solar panel to it.
Okay.
So not much. My generator, I really despise generators, so I never really use it. So it doesn't really work at all anymore, which is just fine with me. I find that if I drive an hour to an hour and a half at the most, I can get a full charge that will get me 2 nights worth of energy without having to stretch it.
Wow.
And so while I'm moving around, I can refill it that way. So I can get a good 2 nights. I can get a good 2 nights with just the energy that I have on the van itself.
By volunteering at all of these national parks and places, you said you get a free RV site. Is that right?
Yes. So the volunteer in the parks program, the VIP program for the National Park Service, and I think this is fairly typical with many of the state parks too. I worked for Humboldt Redwoods State Park as well, and that was the same deal. You work a minimum of hours, usually 24 to 32 hours, so 3 to 4 days a week, depending on what your responsibility is. And I've been both interpretive and I've been a campground host. So I've been both of the major roles that most volunteers tend to play. Some do museums and some do scientific studies and assist that way. I haven't done that. In exchange for the time that you're giving, you get a free RP pad, you get electricity, you get access to government vehicles because much of the time you're going out into the park itself, so you're driving their vehicles. You get a uniform that you have to return. You get a hat, which thankfully you don't have to return. So I have an incredible collection of National Park Service hats of all sorts of styles now. So you get that. In certain parks where they know that you're going to probably be using propane, they'll even refill your propane tank for you. So I get free propane, which is great. And it's just an exchange for the work. And then the work itself, as I said before, it's intriguing, it's interesting. There's a lot of, if you've got kind of curiosity to dive deep down the rabbit hole of a particular park, they really appreciate that. And then your job responsibilities are nicely varied. So in virtually every park I worked at, if I was an interpretive, for instance, I'd work the visitor center for a couple of hours. Then I would have an hour to go read and study and learn something. And then I'd have a couple of hours to drive to some point within the park and walk around and do what they call roving. And that's the ranger you walk up to when you're on a trail and you see the ranger and you have questions. We become one of those and you start asking us questions. So there's a lot of variety in the day. They don't just stick you in a seat someplace for 8 hours during the day. Every park has you moving around to different tasks so that it keeps it fresh and interesting.
Have you faced any challenges on the road, especially with the van?
Oh, it's not as easy of a lifestyle as most people who watch YouTube videos think. Now,
Right.
I think all your listeners would agree to that. It's much more expensive and it's a lot harder than when you think about it. I had my knock on some wood around here somewhere. Use the floor here. But the biggest mechanical failure that I had on the van, I've had two real major mechanical failures. One was, and this is what you get for driving a lot in a short period of time, but it's a turbocharged diesel engine, right? And the hose that connected to the turbocharger had a leak and the engine just sputtered down to very little horsepower on a big, huge vehicle going up a mountain in Nevada. That was really scary. Thankfully, I got to the top and then I rolled down the other side. The worst mechanical issue I had wasn't caused by me, but I ended up getting a new set of rear tires when I was in Richmond, Virginia, and the Mercedes dealer that was there screwed on the new tires. They just didn't screw them on properly. And many miles later, my rear tire almost fell off the van. Thankfully, they came around and realized that they had made a mistake and they ended up paying for it to get repaired somewhere else. But that was really scary, realizing that I was maybe just a few miles away from having my rear wheel come falling off on a freeway. But that's been the biggest thing. There's always something that's wrong. There's always something that's broken. The weather can be a real challenge. It can get really cold, and I can deal with down into about the 20s now. I've got the system set up on the inside of the van. Also, the other struggle, which is even harder, is when you're in a really hot and humid place and you just can never cool the van down. And I'm not one to, when I'm doing my driving, I never go to RV parks because I just don't like RV parks. And it's hard to find places where I can plug in otherwise. So I have to keep the weather in mind as well. I also recognize that, especially with the boondocking, that many people in the community see me as a homeless person. And there's the stigmas that go along with that kind of behavior as well, too. I have to watch out for that. But I made it all the way through COVID in the van, and it was the best thing in the world because I had my own bathroom, my own shower. I'd never had to interact with people generally anyways. I was self-distancing myself just as a job. So those are some of the things. Those are some of the real challenges. Sometimes you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time in the wrong weather, and that can be really quite miserable. I think we've all had leaks at certain points, and I can tell that if I get 1 inch an hour outside in rain, I'm probably going to have one particular leak that I have to deal with. But it would be far too expensive to fix the window to get that done. So I've learned to shove paper towels in just the right place to soak up some of that and then replace those. But I love it. I'm still into this. Is 7.5 years. This is all the time being the van. I've never been in a house that long, and I've never been in a house, the same house, and spent this much time in that house that I did have. So I just think it's the right lifestyle for me. It's got the right rewards. It suits my personality. So I really like it.
It sounds like you're being frugal in your travels as well. How much would you say you spend to maintain this lifestyle every year?
You know what? It's a running joke between myself and the editor of the last couple of books, is that I'm frugal but not cheap. I actually have a budget. I look at what I'm trying to keep. My savings is there for the catastrophic issues. So I try not to deal in my savings. So I budget myself $45 a day, and that includes everything with the exception of insurance payments and any major expense that I could dip into my savings for. However, because I do this volunteering, I can go and spend I can be anywhere between $500 a month, and that includes all of my telecommunications, food, fuel, and stuff. And then there's my van payment. So I budget myself $45 a day. So any day that I don't spend $45 goes into the kitty for the next day. It only gets really expensive when I'm in movement. And that's just mostly because of the fuel prices. Yeah, I am frugal. And when you're traveling around in a van, it's not like you have to spend a lot of money to entertain yourself. You're going someplace to go hike. That doesn't cost anything, really. I like reading books. So a lot of what I do is just drive from one place to someplace really neat and just park there and read for the day or walk around the towns and stuff like that. So there does not necessarily need to be a lot of money on the other end. You have to be a minimalist. As you all know, you can't have a lot of stuff. So I don't need to go worry about shopping for things very much because I don't need that much and I don't have room for it anyways. And if something comes new into the van, I want to go buy a new T-shirt, then some old T-shirt needs to go away.
That could be liberating though, can't it?
Oh, I think it's the best thing in the world. Mm-hmm. My only real crutch really is that I like books and I read. So I'm always going to buy books and I carry those around, which are big and heavy in a sense. But when I buy books now, I go to local public libraries who are desperate to sell their books that they have. And so I can get great books really cheap, and then I don't keep them anymore. I go put them in little libraries or toss them in return boxes of other public libraries, so hopefully they'll find a home there. So yeah, I think frugal's a good word, not cheap. In those areas, I'm able to retain it. And then in my best months, I'm able to get things like I needed to get a new windshield, and I was able to and new brakes, and I was able to pay for that out of my $45 a day budget because of the money I saved on other ends. So I didn't have to dip into savings for that. We'll see how long that lasts.
That's awesome. Being on the road for 7.5 years, how many states have you been to?
I've been to, in the van, I've been to 48 states.
48.
Yeah, I haven't done the Alaska thing. I think I'm probably going to have to join other people to do that because that seems like a very complex process to get to Alaska. And then Hawaii, I've been to Hawaii. I just haven't figured out how to float my van. That's part of the running joke in a way I wrote this book called Sacred Landscapes. It's about the National Park Service. It's my visiting every National Park Service I could drive the van to, which means that if it's a park like Dry Tortugas, which you have to take a boat to, I can't count that one because I can't get the van there. The only time I broke my own rules, because I do have a little model of my van, and I can carry that around with me so that when I went to Governor's Island in New York, I took the little model with me. So I can say that I went there because I had the van with me. But that helps. But yeah, one day I would love to get up to Alaska, and I think that would be great. And although I've been to all the national parks in Hawaii, it just hasn't been part of this experience.
It's hard to RV over there. But it'd probably be easier in a van because you could park anywhere, but they don't have many RV parks, if any, in Hawaii.
No, they're very anti, and I can understand why, too, because it would really change the place. They're not the most RV friendly. And then you kind of learn that. You learn that in the United States. There are certain states that are really quite RV friendly, and there's certain ones that aren't. And so you have to take that into account as to where you're traveling and stuff. I love New Mexico. There's always a place to park. Nevada, almost always a place to park. California, those kinds of places, they're great. It gets more difficult on the East Coast. Midwest, almost every modest-sized town in the Midwest tends to have a park in the middle of the town, and they love you to park there because they think you're going to buy stuff, which
Right.
I try to do wherever I can. So they're very friendly as well too. So it depends on which state that you're going to.
Have you stayed at any Harvest Host properties?
I did the Harvest Host thing fairly early on. I was a member, and I've stayed in a couple of the places, and I thought it was okay. I'm not a member. I wouldn't use the program nearly enough. You also have to take into account that the initial pitch to you is, hey, you could stay in a really cool place for free, but then you also need to spend $20 to $25, which is fair enough for you to be able to stay on that property. And then if you think about that, well, for $20 to $25, I could also probably stay in an RV park where I could plug in. And so I don't necessarily have to spend that kind of money.
Okay, fair enough. So you've written some other books as well outside of Sacred Landscapes. Tell us about those.
Sure. So I've now written 5 books. The first 2 were about Disney theme parks. So the first one's called Walt Disney and the Promise of Progress City. And it looks at Walt Disney as an urban planner and especially focuses on the projects he was working on just prior to his death, which was a college, a city, and a ski resort. And that afforded me the opportunity to be a visiting speaker at the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, which was a terrific experience. Got to know Diane Disney Miller and her husband, Ron Miller, and stuff through that experience. The second one was a history of Disneyland called The Disneyland Story, with about 750 footnotes, so it was an over-the-top history of that park. Then I did a history of Universal Studios after being asked to write a book about Walt Disney World, but thought Walt Disney World was too boring to write about. So I ended up doing one about Universal since no one had ever done that, and that was a good book. And then that led to my 4th book, which is called J-Bangs, which was the guy who created the Universal Studio parks read my Universal story, and he refused to talk to me for a year. He would never return calls because when this guy dropped out, when Jay Stein dropped out from working, he just didn't want to milk it, and he just didn't talk to anybody about his experiences there. And then he got a copy of my Universal book and thought, this is really good, but there's certain people you should give more credit to, and there's a few people taking too much credit. Let's talk. So I talked to him, and Jay is just the most fabulous guy in the world. I just adore him, and ended up writing a book about his experiences trying to beat Disney at their own game, and he certainly had created that with the Universal Florida property. So the first 4 were about theme parks through an urban planner's eyes and a historian's eyes and their design DNA. That's what led to the 5th book, which I was not planning on writing. And I was working in Yellowstone. And I kept asking myself very early on, and I kept asking myself, why are people petting the bison? It's not just because people are stupid. There's something about this place that makes you want to go up to a bison and pet it and not understand the risk. You wouldn't do that on a farm. You wouldn't go walking up to a bison and pet it at a farm. But there's something about it. And I really just, in my head, started really diving into it. And then I started diving into the research and the documentation of it and discovered that the National Park Service, not state parks, not county parks, but the National Park Service, at its heart, is designed with the same DNA that in many respects the Disney theme parks are, and that there is a portal that you pass through when you enter a national park where your lizard brain starts to relax and you're able to absorb the story. It's the lack of visual contradictions is the way I define it, that allows you to absorb the story, accept it in a way that you can't do in any other physical space. And it's done by design. And there's all sorts of little design things that the people don't notice. And that's what I ended up writing about, is how the roads were designed to tell a story and the sequences, and why the signage is the way the signage is, and why you don't just impart information, but it's to provoke emotions. And that's how you get people to learn, because you get them to want to love the resources as much as you do. And it was an absolutely incredible journey to go down. So I was really pleased to do that one too.
That sounds like a lot of fun, that you were able to find all of these things to write about and have enjoyed success with that. So that kind of helps bring in a little bit of money through the sale of books, etc.
Yeah. Royalties are the gift to keep on giving. So I get royalties from that. I get Social Security. I hope to think that I have adequate savings at this point in time. So that's really good. I'm sure that maybe at some point in time, I may be forced to say, look, it's time not to do a volunteer job. It's time to get some sort of money out of this and get paid a little bit. But I'm not at that point at this point in time. One of the things I'm also inspired by is the other volunteers that I work with, and realize that the Park Service is pretty cool about that. Most of the volunteers, we're not young, and I'm much younger than many of the other volunteers. So that's good. And also, too, this is something I had always kept in the back of my mind. One nice thing about being a volunteer and being a senior and working at a national park is, you know what? If something really were to happen to me, I've got EMTs all around me, and they know how to take care of people that are having real health issues. And they know how to get people to help really quickly. So I feel confident that I'm in public spaces where if something really were to happen, I would be able to get assistance. And that is a scary part of the van life and the work camper life, is sometimes you're out there by yourself, and that can be really scary.
If you had to start over again, is there anything you do differently in your RV lifestyle?
Oh, wow. Good question. Never been asked that. You know what? I think I probably would have started the volunteer thing a little bit earlier. I didn't start that until about 4 years ago. I would have made that more. Before, I was just so excited about driving. Most of the thousands of miles that I did were at the first 3 years or so. I would have probably paced myself a little bit more like that, because it's been good for the van. It's been good for me psychologically. But no, you know what? I think that's the whole idea of this RV lifestyle. I think we all have the same thing, which is we're going to go jump off a cliff, and hopefully we're going to catch the branch on the way down. And you have to go through these struggles to learn something, and everybody has to do it. And it's always different, and it's always new. No, I think I needed to do the struggles that I've had to get to where I'm at this point in time and have a certain level of confidence that I have right now.
That's a great perspective. Is there any advice you would give to people who are contemplating jumping into the RV lifestyle, especially people who might be over 60?
Yeah, I think that you have to take assessment of yourself. Are you the kind of person who enjoys your time by yourself? Because most of the time you're going to be by yourself. If you like being around groups, or if you like being around other people all the time, then I say take a 6-month job as a work camper someplace where you got another staff and you're working with other people, so that you're always around other people. If you like being by yourself most of the time, like myself, and you like reading or hiking on your own and that kind of stuff like that, then do it. Recognize that no matter how much you prepare, it's going to be harder than you think. The weather's going to be more of a pain in the ass than you think, that it's going to cost you a lot more money than you think, that you always have to assume something is broken and something is going to be broken next, because that's the reality of it. And to try to have the attitude that you can overcome the adversity just by getting through it to the other side. You got to be a buffalo. You basically have to be a bison. You think about it, bison are one of the only animals, when they see a storm coming, they walk into the storm, because it's the fastest way to get out the other side of it.
That's a good way to look at it. Yes.
That's what it's like to be a work camper. I think that the people that you're around, the experiences that you're going to gain, the places that you can be in make up for all of that. I lived in Big Bend. I lived in the Sequoias. I've lived in the Redwoods. I've lived in these places. You can't do that in any other lifestyle. And there's something really magical about living in these places and understanding them and getting deep into it. I think it's good. But yeah, you're always going to be struggling. That is part of it. It's not a panacea for happiness. You have to create your own happiness, or I'll quote Walt Disney, happiness is spontaneous delight harmonized with circumstances.
That is
and
yeah, that is great advice, Sam. I really appreciate that. How can people connect with you or follow you on your journeys? I know you're on Facebook and you're posting a lot of fun videos or pictures there.
Facebook is the primary place. I really just despise social media.
Yes.
There's, in a way, kind of one of the other wonderful things, and this came up in a discussion with somebody recently. They're going, geez, I've learned to turn off my phone and my computer. And I can use the excuse that I'm in the middle of the woods and I can't reach you, that kind of thing, even though I may have 5 bars on my phone. But I've learned to just turn off the social media stuff. I don't need to know what else is going on like that. It's not relevant to my needs at that moment. So that happens fairly well. Facebook would be the best bet.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time and sharing your story. I found it very inspirational. I know other people are as well. You seem to be cramming a lot of life into your life, and I love that. So thanks for telling us about it.
Thank you very much for having me. This has been a real honor.
Sam Gennawey offered terrific advice for anyone considering the RV lifestyle, especially those people over 60 who want to travel with more purpose. He encouraged people to take an honest assessment of their personalities to determine whether they enjoy long stretches of solitude or if they'd thrive working alongside other people. Whichever the case, he said the lifestyle requires flexibility, resilience, and the willingness to work through unexpected weather, repairs, and delays. He noted that RVing is often more difficult and more expensive than people expect, which is why maintaining a realistic mindset is essential. Something will always need attention or break, and the weather will not always cooperate. Yet the rewards are immense. Living inside national parks, hiking trails before the gates open, seeing landscapes without crowds, and learning from park rangers are opportunities that don't come with any other lifestyle. Sam also urged newcomers to travel like a bison by walking into challenges rather than running from them, because persistence helps you reach the other side faster. For him, volunteering has been the key to keeping expenses low and preserving his van's lifespan, as well as experiencing America's popular places more deeply. People can follow Sam's ongoing travels, photos, and stories on Facebook. He posts regularly about the parks he lives in, the routes he takes, and the adventures that shape his life on the road. If you'd like to be inspired by someone who is squeezing every drop out of life, you'll enjoy connecting with Sam and following his remarkable journey. Would you like to be featured in an upcoming episode of Workamper Show? I encourage you to schedule an interview with me at workampershow.com. We'd love to hear about your workamping experiences, how you got started RVing, and what you love and dislike about the RVing lifestyle. You can help others explore all the different ways to live this great lifestyle by sharing your story. If you're an employer of workampers, we invite you to be on the podcast too. Share all the details of your workamping jobs in a future episode. It only costs a little bit of your time. Schedule an interview with me today by going to workampershow.com. You'll find the schedule buttons at the bottom of the homepage. That's all for this week's show. Next time I'll be speaking with an executive from Love's Travel Stops about the new overnight RV parks the company is developing all over the country. I'll have that interview on the next episode of The Workamper Show. Thanks for listening, and if you like these interviews, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.